22 stars, 22 nightmares hidden behind perfect smiles. One was lobotomized by her own mother. One had his entire childhood fortune stolen by the woman who gave birth to him. One begged for her unborn baby's life before being stabbed 16 times. What if I told you these weren't movie plots? They were real life, and the studios spent millions to hide the truth. Frances Farmer, kidnapped, lobotomized, and destroyed by her own mother. Frances Farmer woke up strapped to a bed in a psychiatric institution in 1942. For the next 5 years, she would endure ice water baths meant to shock her into submission, insulin shock therapy that induced comas, restraints that left bruises covering her body. According to some accounts, Frances may have even undergone a transorbital lobotomy, a procedure where an ice pick-like instrument is inserted through the eye socket to sever connections in the brain. Historians still debate whether this actually occurred, as records from that era are incomplete and asylums kept secret. Who put her there? Not the studios, not the police, her own mother. Frances had been everything Hollywood claimed to want in the 1930s. Brilliant, beautiful, and fearless. Born in Seattle in 1913, she possessed intelligence and talent that set her apart. She won a national essay contest at 16 with a piece questioning the existence of God. By her early 20s, she was starring opposite Bing Crosby and Cary Grant, her performances earning critical acclaim. But Frances refused to play by Hollywood's rules. She spoke openly about communist sympathies at the height of anti-communist hysteria. She showed up to premieres without makeup, rejecting the glamorous facade. She drank heavily and dated men the studio deemed inappropriate. To Paramount executives, Frances wasn't just difficult. She was a liability threatening their carefully controlled system. Her mother, Lillian, was controlling and deeply religious, viewing her daughter's rebellion as moral corruption that needed to be corrected. When Frances's career faltered due to her reputation, Lillian saw an opportunity. In 1942, after Frances was arrested for driving with a suspended license, Lillian had her daughter committed. What emerged years later told the complete story. The brilliant, defiant actress had been replaced by a docile, broken woman who barely resembled her former self. Fellow patients who remembered her from before the treatments said it was like watching someone's soul get erased. Whether through lobotomy or years of barbaric treatments, Frances Farmer's mind had been destroyed. She spent nearly 5 years institutionalized, released only in 1950 after her mother could no longer afford the costs. Frances attempted to rebuild her life, working as a hotel clerk and appearing on a local television show. But she never regained her career or her sense of self. She passed away in 1970 at age 56 from esophageal cancer. The woman who dared to think differently had been punished by having her very ability to think stolen from her. Her tragedy became a cautionary tale whispered among other rebellious actresses. This is what happens when you don't conform. Jackie Coogan, the child star whose mother stole his fortune. Hollywood's golden age was built on the exploitation of children, and no one understood this better than Jackie Coogan. When audiences watched the cherubic 7-year-old boy in Charlie Chaplin's 1921 masterpiece, The Kid, they were witnessing the birth of celebrity childhood. Jackie's talent and charm made him America's first child superstar, more famous than any adult actor of his era. By age 18, Jackie had earned more than $4 million, roughly $68 million today. Jackie trusted his mother Lillian and stepfather Arthur Bernstein completely. They managed his finances, attended his meetings, made his investments, and assured him his fortune was being carefully protected. He believed them. Why wouldn't he? They were family. On his 21st birthday in 1935, Jackie approached his mother with exciting plans. He wanted to access his money, perhaps invest in property, and start his own production company. That's when his mother looked at her son, the boy who'd worked since age 6, who'd supported the entire family, and said, "No law says I have to give you anything." $4 million, gone. Every penny spent on mansions in Beverly Hills, luxury automobiles imported from Europe, fur coats and jewelry for his mother, extravagant parties where they played the role of wealthy socialites. They'd lived like royalty on his earnings while he was still a minor. She'd stolen it all, and she was right. There was no law to stop her. California had no protections for child performers. When Jackie protested, his mother showed no remorse. She actually seemed angry that he'd dare question her right to his money. Jackie's only option was to take his own mother to court. The 1938 trial became a media sensation, exposing the dark reality of child stardom. Jackie's lawyers presented evidence of the massive fortune he'd earned. Lillian showed no remorse on the witness stand, testifying calmly that she believed she was entitled to the money. The jury was sympathetic to Jackie, but the legal reality was unforgiving. He recovered only $126,000 of his $4 million fortune, barely 3%. Yet Jackie Coogan's stolen childhood would have lasting meaning. Public outrage over his case led California to pass the Coogan Law in 1939, requiring 15% of a child performer's earnings be placed in a blocked trust account that parents couldn't touch. Every child actor today benefits from legislation his tragedy inspired. Jackie eventually rebuilt his career, finding steady work as a character actor and later playing Uncle Fester on the Addams Family television series. He passed away in 1984 at 69, never recovering his fortune, but knowing he'd protected countless children from the same fate. Sharon Tate, the pregnant actress slaughtered by the Manson family. Sometimes the horror came from outside Hollywood's gates, random and unstoppable. Sharon Tate embodied everything beautiful about the 1960s. Youth, possibility, the promise of a bright future. Born in 1943, she was ethereally lovely with delicate features and a gentle spirit. By 1967, she was married to director Roman Polanski, appearing in films like Valley of the Dolls, and pregnant with their first child. Friends described her as kind, sweet-natured, excited about becoming a mother. On August 8, 1969, she was 8.5 months pregnant, days from her due date. She decorated a nursery, chosen baby names. That night, Sharon was at the home she and Polanski rented at 10,050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon. Roman was in Europe working on a film. Sharon had 3 friends staying with her: celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, and Folger's boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski. They'd had dinner together, planning to watch television and relax. Just after midnight on August 9th, 4 members of Charles Manson's cult arrived at the property. They cut the phone lines, isolating everyone inside. Watson shot 18-year-old Stephen Parent, who'd been visiting the property's caretaker, as he tried to leave. Then they entered the house. What happened next was carnage beyond comprehension. The intruders attacked everyone inside with knives and weapons. Jay Sebring was shot and stabbed 7 times. Wojciech Frykowski tried to fight back and was shot twice, struck over the head 13 times, and stabbed 51 times. Abigail Folger tried to escape and was stabbed 28 times. Sharon Tate, heavily pregnant and terrified, begged for mercy. According to Susan Atkins' later testimony, Sharon pleaded, "Please don't harm my baby. You can take me with you, but please let my baby live." They showed no mercy. Sharon was stabbed 16 times. Her unborn son, whom she and Roman had planned to name Paul, perished with her. She was 26 years old. The Manson family members left the scene, writing the word "pig" in Sharon's blood on the front door. When the bodies were discovered the next morning, the crime scene was so horrific that even veteran Los Angeles detectives were traumatized. The tragedy shocked the world and marked a turning point in American culture. The 1960s idealism ended that night on Cielo Drive. The randomness of Sharon's fate, her only crime being in that house on that night, made it terrifying. If it could happen to Sharon Tate, it could happen to anyone. Shirley Temple, Hollywood's darling, sexually exploited as a child. Other horrors were perpetrated by industry predators who exploited the most vulnerable. Shirley Temple was America's darling in the 1930s, the most successful child star in film history. Her dimpled smile, curly hair, and innocent charm made her the top box office draw from 1935 to 38, when she was just 7 to 10 years old. She saved 20th Century Fox from bankruptcy during the Depression. America saw her as childhood innocence embodied, but that protection didn't extend to Shirley herself. In her 1988 autobiography, Temple revealed a shattering incident that had remained secret for 50 years. She was 11 years old when MGM producer Arthur Freed invited her to his office, ostensibly to discuss a role. Her mother waited outside. Once alone with the child, Freed exposed himself to her. Young Shirley, shocked, didn't understand what was happening. Her nervous reaction was to laugh, a trauma response many victims display when confronted with the incomprehensible. Freed was furious at her laughter. He threw her out of his office, and she never got the role. She told no one about the incident until decades later. Temple's revelation exposed systematic abuse in Hollywood. Freed was one of MGM's most powerful producers, responsible for classics like Singin' in the Rain and The Wizard of Oz. He worked with children regularly throughout his career and faced no consequences for his behavior. Shirley's incident wasn't isolated. It was part of a culture where powerful men felt entitled to exploit child performers, knowing the studios would protect them at all costs. Temple retired at 22, transitioning to public service and eventually becoming a U.S. ambassador. She lived a full, accomplished life, passing away in 2014 at 85. But the trauma never fully left her. Her bravery in speaking about it decades later helped expose the predatory culture that had been hidden behind Hollywood's glamorous facade for generations. Joan Crawford, the abusive mother behind the glamorous facade, sometimes the monsters were within the family itself. Joan Crawford was Hollywood royalty, one of the defining stars of the Golden Age. Born Lucille Lesueur in 1904, she reinvented herself as Joan Crawford and became the epitome of glamour and sophistication. Her career spanned 5 decades. She won an Academy Award for Mildred Pierce. Fan magazines showcased her beautiful home and 4 adopted children, Christina, Christopher, and twins Cindy and Kathy. She appeared to be the perfect mother. Behind closed doors, according to eldest daughter Christina, a different reality existed. In 1978, a year after Joan passed away, Christina published Mommy Dearest, portraying her adoptive mother as an abusive, alcoholic tyrant who terrorized her children. The book described physical beatings with coat hangers and belts, psychological mistreatment, bizarre punishments like forcing the children to eat rancid food, and unpredictable rages fueled by alcohol and prescription medication. The infamous wire hanger incident, Joan having a violent outburst over wire hangers in Christina's closet instead of the padded ones she demanded, became the book's most quoted line. Christina described a childhood walking on eggshells, never knowing which mother would appear: the glamorous star who smiled for cameras, or the terrifying woman who struck her children for minor infractions. The memoir detailed Joan's alcoholism, which worsened over the years. Christopher corroborated parts of Christina's account, though the twins disputed the claims, saying they experienced Joan as a loving mother. Whether every detail was exact, the terror Christina felt was real. No child invents that kind of fear. The book shattered Joan's carefully constructed image. Bing Crosby, America's crooner, and the children who feared him. Another beloved star's children would tell a similar story. Bing Crosby was America's voice, the crooner whose smooth baritone soothed millions during World War II and beyond. Born Harry Lillis Crosby in 1903, he became one of the most successful entertainers of the 20th century. His recording of White Christmas remains the best-selling single of all time, played every holiday season in homes across America. He won an Oscar for playing a warm, understanding priest in Going My Way. His road to comedy films with Bob Hope made him one of Hollywood's biggest box office draws. His public persona embodied easygoing charm and wholesome family values. The friendly neighbor, the ideal father figure. His son Gary shattered that image in 1983 with the memoir Going My Own Way, published after Bing passed away in 1977. Gary described his father as harsh, emotionally distant, and physically abusive toward his 4 sons, from his first marriage to Dixie Lee. According to Gary, Bing beat his sons with a belt for infractions as minor as poor grades or talking back. He instituted bizarre, militaristic rules, including weekly weigh-ins where the boys had to maintain specific weights or face punishment. He was cold and withholding of affection, treating his sons more like subordinates in boot camp than children deserving love and guidance. The man whose voice brought warmth to millions showed none of that warmth at home. Gary's brothers Philip and Dennis corroborated aspects of his account, describing a household ruled by fear and strict discipline. The emotional scars ran deep. Tragically, both Dennis and Lindsay later took their own lives, Dennis in 1991 and Lindsay in 1989. Their struggles attributed partly to the trauma of their childhood under Bing's tyrannical rule. Yet there's a twist that makes the story more complex. Bing's second wife, Catherine Grant, whom he married in 1957 when he was 54, had 3 children with him, Harry, Mary, and Nathaniel. These children described a completely different father: warm, involved, loving, present at their school events, and genuinely affectionate in ways he never was with his first family. Perhaps age had mellowed him. Perhaps losing Dixie Lee to alcoholism had changed him. Perhaps he'd learned from his mistakes. We may never know which Bing was real, or if both versions existed simultaneously in the same man. But we know this: 4 boys grew up terrified of their father, walking on eggshells in their own home, and 2 couldn't survive the damage that fear inflicted. The voice that comforted a nation brought only pain to those who should have been closest to him. If these shocking revelations about Hollywood's perfect families have you hooked, subscribe now so you never miss the dark truths we uncover. Hit that subscribe button, because these mysteries only get more haunting from here. Natalie Wood, the mysterious drowning that still haunts Hollywood. These stories reveal darkness behind Hollywood's glamorous facade. But the industry's secrets took other forms, mysteries that remain unsolved decades later. Natalie Wood was a star from childhood, appearing in Miracle on 34th Street at age 8. She grew into one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, starring in Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Splendor in the Grass. Beautiful, talented, seemingly happy in her second marriage to actor Robert Wagner, Natalie appeared to have it all in 1981. Yet she carried a lifelong phobia. She was terrified of dark water. On the weekend of November 28, 1981, Natalie and Robert Wagner were on their yacht Splendor, anchored off Catalina Island. Christopher Walken, Natalie's Brainstorm co-star, was also aboard, along with Captain Dennis Davern. The evening involved heavy drinking. According to various accounts, there was tension and arguing between Wagner and Natalie. Sometime after midnight on November 29th, Natalie was discovered missing from the boat. Her body was found in the water the next morning, about a mile from the yacht. She wore a nightgown, socks, and a red down jacket. A small inflatable dinghy was found nearby. The initial investigation ruled her passing accidental drowning. The theory was that Natalie had tried securing the banging dinghy, slipped, fell into the cold water, and couldn't get back aboard because the jacket became waterlogged. She perished from hypothermia and drowning. She was 43. But this explanation never made sense to those who knew her. Why would a woman with extreme water phobia go on deck alone late at night to deal with a dinghy? Why didn't she call for help? Why were there fresh bruises on her body and scratches on her face? In 2011, 30 years later, Los Angeles authorities reopened the case after Captain Davern came forward with new information. He claimed that Wagner and Natalie had argued violently that night, that he'd heard crashing sounds and shouting, and that Wagner had discouraged him from immediately searching for Natalie or turning on searchlights when they discovered she was missing. In 2018, Wagner was officially named a person of interest, though he's never been charged. Here's what we know for certain: fresh bruises on her arms and a scratch on her face. Wagner's story changed multiple times. The captain heard violent arguing. Wagner discouraged an immediate search. 3 theories emerged. 1. Natalie tried leaving the yacht in the dinghy during an argument and accidentally fell. 2. She fell accidentally, and Wagner delayed the search to protect himself from scrutiny. 3. Something happened on that yacht that Wagner doesn't want revealed. Wagner refuses to speak to investigators. The woman, terrified of dark water, ended up in it under circumstances that still make no sense. Whether by accident, negligence, or something worse, we may never know. Marilyn Monroe, the icon destroyed by Hollywood and powerful men. Another icon's passing has fueled conspiracy theories for over 6 decades. Marilyn Monroe was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood glamour, beauty, and allure. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, she endured childhood abandonment and foster homes before reinventing herself as Marilyn. By the 50s, she was the biggest star in the world. But behind the breathy voice and carefully constructed persona was a deeply fragile woman searching for love and stability she'd never known. Marilyn's affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy are well documented. She allegedly had a brief relationship with JFK. When that ended, she became involved with RFK, who reportedly promised to leave his wife for her, a promise he had no intention of keeping. These relationships put Marilyn in dangerous territory. She was privy to conversations about government secrets. She kept a red diary where she reportedly recorded details of what the Kennedy brothers told her. According to some accounts, Marilyn grew frustrated with being used and threatened to hold a press conference revealing her relationships with the Kennedys. For men at the highest power levels, this made her a serious liability. On August 4th, 1962, Marilyn was at her Brentwood home. Her housekeeper Eunice Murray later gave contradictory accounts of that evening's events. Early on August 5th, Marilyn was discovered gone in her bedroom from what was officially ruled an overdose of barbiturates. She was 36 years old. The official ruling was probable self-harm, but circumstances contained troubling inconsistencies. Medical examiners found no pill residue in Marilyn's stomach, which should have been present if she'd swallowed that many capsules. There was unexplained bruising. The timeline changed multiple times in different accounts. Her red diary disappeared. Phone records mysteriously went missing. Some witnesses claimed seeing Robert Kennedy at her house that evening, though this was officially denied. Many researchers believe Marilyn was taken from this world to silence her, either by government operatives or by others connected to the Kennedys who saw her as a threat. The theory suggests she was given a lethal injection or a barbiturate enema, which would explain the lack of pill residue while still showing high levels in her bloodstream. Others believe her passing was accidental or accept the official ruling. The truth remains unknown, despite countless investigations. Inger Stevens, the secret spouse and suspicious suicide. Another mysterious passing followed a similar pattern. Inger Stevens was a beautiful Swedish-American actress who achieved success in 60s television, starring in The Farmer's Daughter, born in Stockholm in 1934. She came to America as a teenager and worked her way up to Hollywood stardom. By 1970, she had a thriving career and what appeared to be a bright future. But Inger hid profound depression and a dangerous secret. Since 1961, Inger had been secretly married to African-American actor Ike Jones. They kept the marriage hidden because interracial marriages could still destroy careers in Hollywood's discriminatory climate. Inger presented herself as single, never acknowledging her husband publicly. The strain of living this double life took a severe toll. On the morning of April 30th, 1970, Inger's housekeeper found her unconscious on her kitchen floor. She had perished from acute barbiturate poisoning. She was 35 years old. The loss was officially ruled self-harm, but Inger's friends insisted she hadn't been in a state of mind suggesting such action. She'd been making future plans, discussing upcoming projects enthusiastically. Ike Jones believed she was taken from this world. He pointed to irregularities at the scene and the fact that Inger had been receiving threatening letters that were never properly investigated. The timeline had inconsistencies similar to Marilyn Monroe's case. Was it self-harm brought on by stress, an accidental overdose, or something more sinister? The case was never reopened. Another barbiturate incident, another suspicious ruling. Lana Turner, the daughter who killed to save her mother. Not all violence was mysterious. Sometimes it was devastatingly clear. Lana Turner was glamour personified in the 40s and 50s, discovered at a drugstore counter and transformed into one of MGM's biggest stars. Her beauty was legendary, earning her the nickname, the Sweater Girl. Her personal life was tumultuous, 8 marriages and numerous high-profile affairs that kept her name in the tabloids. In 1957, she began a relationship with Johnny Stompanato, a small-time criminal and enforcer for notorious mob boss Mickey Cohen. Stompanato was handsome and charming to outsiders, presenting himself as a successful businessman. But behind closed doors, he was dangerously violent, physically assaulting Lana regularly and leaving bruises she had to cover with makeup before going to the studio. The relationship was toxic from the start. Stompanato was obsessively jealous of Lana's fame and her male co-stars. He accompanied her to film sets uninvited, creating scenes that embarrassed her professionally. He controlled her movements, monitored her phone calls, and flew into rages over perceived slights. Lana tried to end the relationship multiple times, but Stompanato refused to let go. His connections to organized crime made him even more frightening. This wasn't just an angry boyfriend, but a man with dangerous friends. On the evening of April 4th, 1958, Lana and Stompanato argued loudly in her bedroom at her Beverly Hills home. The fight was about Lana's career and Stompanato's jealousy over her role in a new film. His voice grew louder, more threatening. Lana's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, was in her bedroom nearby and could hear her mother's frightened screams through the walls. According to Cheryl's account, she heard Stompanato threaten to harm her mother, to harm Cheryl herself, to harm Lana's elderly mother, even to disfigure Lana's face so she could never work again. His rage was escalating beyond anything Cheryl had heard before. Terrified that he would actually carry out his threats, Cheryl grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer, ran upstairs, and burst into the bedroom. She plunged the knife into Stompanato's stomach. He collapsed and bled out on the bedroom floor. He was 32 years old. Cheryl was 14. The incident was ruled justifiable homicide after a coroner's inquest. The jury determined that Cheryl had ended Stompanato's life to protect her mother from imminent danger. Cheryl was placed under psychiatric care but faced no criminal charges. The case became a media sensation, dominating headlines for months. But rumors immediately began circulating that challenged the official account. Some believed Lana had actually ended his life in self-defense, and Cheryl took the blame to protect her mother's career. The theory suggested that a manslaughter charge for Lana would have destroyed her career and earning potential, while a minor could avoid prosecution through a justifiable homicide ruling and public sympathy for protecting her mother. The truth may never be known. What's certain is that either version is tragic. If Cheryl did it, a 14-year-old was forced to take a life to save her mother, a trauma that would mark her entire existence. If Lana did it and Cheryl covered for her, a child was made to bear the psychological burden of falsely claiming responsibility for ending someone's life to protect her mother's livelihood. Either way, a 14-year-old girl lived with blood on her hands for the rest of her life, never able to fully escape that terrible night when violence invaded her home and changed everything forever. Montgomery Clift, the accident that destroyed the most beautiful face in Hollywood. Violence wasn't always protective. Sometimes it was purely destructive, as with Montgomery Clift. He possessed what many considered the most beautiful face in 50s Hollywood. Sensitive, soulful, magnetic on screen. His eyes held depths that the camera loved, and his delicate features conveyed vulnerability and strength simultaneously. Born in 1920, Clift was one of the finest actors of his generation. Nominated for Academy Awards for The Search, A Place in the Sun, and From Here to Eternity, he was method before method acting had a name, bringing unprecedented psychological depth and realism to every role. At 35 in May 1956, his career was soaring. He had his pick of projects, commanded top dollar, and was considered one of the most talented actors in the industry. On the evening of May 12th, Clift attended a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's Beverly Hills home. He and Taylor had become close friends while filming A Place in the Sun, forming a bond that would last the rest of his life. He left around midnight, having had several drinks during the evening, driving down the winding, treacherous roads of Coldwater Canyon in the dark. Somehow, perhaps he was distracted. Perhaps the alcohol impaired his judgment. Perhaps he simply misjudged the curve. He lost control of his car and smashed directly into a telephone pole. The impact was catastrophic. His face was destroyed. Jaw shattered in multiple places, nose crushed, cheekbones fractured, teeth knocked out. The steering wheel had driven into his face with tremendous force. When Taylor heard the crash from her house, she rushed to the wreckage and found Clift trapped in the mangled car, conscious but choking, unable to breathe properly. His front teeth had been knocked loose and were lodged in his throat, blocking his airway. Without hesitation, Taylor reached into his mouth, risking injury to herself, and pulled the teeth out, saving his life by preventing him from choking. She stayed with him, covered in his blood, until the ambulance arrived. Her quick action in those crucial minutes kept him alive. Clift underwent extensive reconstructive surgery over the following months, enduring procedure after painful procedure as surgeons attempted to rebuild what had been destroyed. Plastic surgeons did their best to repair the damage, working with what remained of his facial structure, but his face was never the same. The left side remained partially paralyzed, giving him a slightly lopsided appearance that the unforgiving camera caught mercilessly. The symmetry that had made him so beautiful was gone. The ineffable quality that had made him luminous on screen, that combination of beauty and vulnerability, was gone forever, replaced by visible scars and a haunted look that never left his eyes. Worse than the physical damage was the chronic pain that plagued him afterward. His jaw never healed properly, causing constant discomfort. Headaches became his daily companion. To cope with the unrelenting agony and the psychological trauma of losing his face, he became addicted to alcohol and prescription painkillers, a dangerous combination that further deteriorated his appearance and health. The substances bloated his features and dulled his once sharp instincts. Clift continued acting, determined to work despite his limitations and prove he was more than just a beautiful face. But roles grew smaller and less prestigious. His performances became increasingly erratic as the addiction tightened its grip. He had trouble remembering lines and would sometimes appear confused on set. Directors who'd once begged to work with him now avoided him, viewing him as unreliable and damaged goods. The insurance companies that backed films considered him too great a risk. Elizabeth Taylor remained fiercely loyal, insisting he be cast opposite her in Suddenly Last Summer and later in Reflections in a Golden Eye, despite fierce studio resistance and concerns about his ability to complete the films. On July 23, 1966, Clift was found gone in his New York townhouse from a heart attack brought on by years of substance abuse. He was 45 years old. The accident had taken 10 years to claim him completely, destroying him slowly through pain, addiction, and the loss of the very thing that had defined him. The most beautiful face in Hollywood had become a cautionary tale about how quickly everything can change, how a single moment can alter the trajectory of an entire life. Hedy Lamarr, the bombshell inventor, whose genius was ignored. For one actress, beauty became both her greatest asset and the reason her genius was dismissed. Hedy Lamarr was called the most beautiful woman in the world. Born Hedwig Kiesler in Vienna in 1913, she married arms dealer Fritz Mandl when she was just 19. Mandl was controlling, abusive, and politically connected, holding her prisoner in their castle while he entertained Nazi officials, fascist leaders, and weapons manufacturers. During those dinners, young Hedy was forced to sit quietly and look decorative while these men discussed weapons technology and military communications. She absorbed everything. Hedy finally escaped by disguising herself as a maid, fleeing to Paris and then America. She came to Hollywood and became a star in films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah. Audiences saw only a gorgeous face, never suspecting the brilliant scientific mind beneath. During World War II, Hedy desperately wanted to contribute to the war effort against the Nazis she'd escaped. Using knowledge gained from those forced gatherings, she and composer George Antheil developed frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology designed to prevent enemy jamming of torpedo guidance systems. In June 1942, they received U.S. patent number 2,292,387 for their secret communication system. Hedy offered her invention freely to the U.S. Navy. The Navy dismissed it. They told her that, as an actress, she could better serve by selling war bonds, not by trying to contribute scientifically. Too pretty to be smart, too glamorous to be taken seriously. The patent sat unused for decades. It wasn't until the 1960s that military engineers rediscovered the technology and recognized its brilliance. It was used in military communications during the Cuban Missile Crisis. By then, Hedy's patent had expired, meaning she would never receive compensation. The technology eventually became the foundation for modern Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and GPS, innovations worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Hedy lived to see her contribution acknowledged near the end of her life. In 1997, she and George Antheil posthumously received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award. In 2014, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. But these honors came too late. She passed away in January 2000 at 85, having never received financial compensation or widespread recognition. The woman Hollywood saw as just a beautiful face had invented technology that would transform humanity's future. Peter Lorre, the morphine addict who couldn't escape his creepy persona. At least, Hedy was dismissed and ignored. The next two stars were actively imprisoned by Hollywood, trapped in personas that slowly destroyed them. Peter Lorre's face was haunting. Bulbous eyes, soft features, an unsettling quality that made him unforgettable. Born Laszlo Lowenstein in Hungary in 1904, he was a respected stage actor in Germany before fleeing the Nazis. His breakthrough film role was in Fritz Lang's 1931 masterpiece M, where he played a compulsive child predator. The performance was brilliant and chilling. Hollywood took notice, but they saw only one thing: a man who could play creepy, sinister characters. From that moment forward, Lorre was ruthlessly typecast. Studios cast him repeatedly as villains, henchmen, disturbed criminals. He played memorable roles in The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca, but always as the unsettling presence lurking in shadows, never the hero. Lorre desperately wanted to play other kinds of roles, but Hollywood wouldn't let him escape. Compounding his artistic frustration was chronic physical pain. After a gallbladder removal surgery, Lorre suffered ongoing complications. To manage the pain and cope with frustration, he became addicted to morphine. The addiction worsened his physical appearance dramatically. The studios didn't care. They kept casting him in the same creepy roles, his deteriorating appearance only making him more useful. Lorre tried repeatedly to break free. He directed one film, Der Verlorene, in Germany in 1951, playing a tragic, sympathetic figure. The film was brilliant and showed what Lorre was truly capable of. But it found no audience, and Hollywood wasn't interested. When the film failed, something inside him broke. He gave up fighting. He returned to America and resigned himself to playing monsters for the rest of his career. On March 23, 1964, Lorre suffered a fatal stroke at 59 years old. The man who terrified millions on screen was trapped in a cage of his own famous face. Bela Lugosi, Dracula's descent into morphine addiction and poverty. Another horror icon suffered the same fate, perhaps more completely. Bela Lugosi became immortal in 1931 when he played Count Dracula. Born Bela Ferenc Dzoblasko in Hungary in 1882, Lugosi was a respected classical actor who'd performed Shakespeare on prestigious stages. His Hungarian accent and commanding presence made him perfect for Dracula. It also destroyed any chance he had of a varied career. Like Lorre, Lugosi was ruthlessly typecast in horror films. By the 1950s, as horror films fell out of favor, work dried up. The roles that remained were increasingly desperate, cheap exploitation films. Lugosi, once a sophisticated classical actor, was reduced to appearing in embarrassments like Plan 9 from Outer Space, often called the worst film ever made. Adding to his professional humiliation was chronic sciatica pain from World War I injuries. To manage the pain, he became addicted to morphine and methadone, substances that further deteriorated his health and employability. By his 70s, Lugosi was broke, his career in ruins. Yet those who knew him spoke of his fundamental dignity. He taught free acting classes. He checked himself into rehab in 1955, determined to fight his addiction even though his career was already over. On August 16, 1956, he had a fatal heart attack. He was 73 years old and nearly penniless. Lugosi's burial request revealed how Dracula had consumed his identity, but also how he'd made peace with it. He was buried in one of the black capes he'd worn in the film. Unlike Lorre, who passed away still trying to escape his typecast image, Lugosi had chosen to embrace it in the end. The vampire lived forever in cinema history. The man who played him left this world forgotten by Hollywood, broke and alone, but somehow with his dignity intact. Vivien Leigh, the beautiful mind ravaged by bipolar disorder. Typecasting wasn't the only mental prison stars endured. Vivien Leigh possessed beauty so striking that when audiences first saw her as Scarlett O'Hara in 1939's Gone with the Wind, many believed they were watching the character come to life. Born Vivien Mary Hartley in India in 1913, she was classically trained on the London stage. Her performance as Scarlett won her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Her marriage to Laurence Olivier in 1940 made them Hollywood royalty. Behind that breathtaking beauty, bipolar disorder raged uncontrolled. During manic episodes, Vivien became hypersensitive, prone to risky behavior, and exhibited violent outbursts. She would disappear for days, then return home confused and ashamed. During depressive episodes, she was catatonic, unable to work or care for herself. The disorder was particularly cruel because it was episodic and unpredictable. Olivier tried desperately to protect her, but living with the severity of Vivien's illness broke him. He would find her in manic states, unrecognizable. She became paranoid during episodes, sometimes violent toward him. The psychological strain on their marriage was unbearable. By the 1950s, her reputation as difficult made casting her problematic. Olivier couldn't cope anymore. Their marriage ended in 1960, though he continued caring about her from a distance. Vivien's mental illness was compounded by tuberculosis that steadily weakened her body. On July 7, 1967, Vivien Leigh was found gone in her London flat. Tuberculosis, the coroner stated. But those who knew her understood. Her body had surrendered after years of fighting a mind that had turned against her. Vivien Leigh was 53 years old. Bipolar disorder had stolen everything: her marriage, her career, and finally, her life. Barbara Payton, the beauty destroyed by violent lovers. For some stars, the descent into darkness was even more rapid. Barbara Payton was breathtakingly beautiful in the late 1940s. Born in 1927, she was signed to major studios and appeared poised for stardom. Her beauty opened every door. It also attracted dangerous attention. In 1951, Payton became involved with actor Franchot Tone, a respected performer 20 years her senior. Simultaneously, she was also involved with actor Tom Neal, a B-movie tough guy with a violent temper. When the two men learned about each other, they fought. On September 14, 1951, Neal beat Tone so severely that Tone was hospitalized for weeks with a broken nose, fractured cheekbone, severe concussion, and brain trauma. The scandal destroyed Payton's career overnight. Studios dropped her. Her beauty couldn't save her reputation. Over the next several years, Payton descended into alcoholism and substance abuse. Unable to find work, she eventually engaged in activities for money to survive. By the early 1960s, Payton was barely recognizable. Her face was ravaged by years of substance abuse. In 1967, broken and ill, she returned to her parents' San Diego home, where she passed away on May 8th at age 39 from heart and liver failure. From Hollywood beauty to tragic footnote in less than 2 decades. Dorothy Stratten, the playmate murdered by her jealous husband. Another beautiful young woman's life would end even more brutally. Dorothy Stratten was working at a Dairy Queen in Vancouver when small-time hustler Paul Snider discovered her. She was 17, blonde, beautiful, and heartbreakingly innocent. Snider, recognizing her potential for exploitation, convinced her to pose for photographs, became her boyfriend and manager, and sent her photos to Playboy. In 1979, she was named Playboy's Playmate of the Month. In 1980, at age 20, she was Playmate of the Year. Her acting career was beginning. But Snider wanted to own and control her. They married in 1979 when she was still young and under his influence. As her career flourished, she started realizing how controlling and abusive Snider was. Dorothy started an affair with director Peter Bogdanovich and made the decision to leave Snider. Snider couldn't accept losing control. On August 14, 1980, he lured Dorothy to the Los Angeles house they'd once shared. What happened in that house was horror beyond description. Snider assaulted her in the most brutal ways imaginable, then shot her with a weapon, ending her life. He then turned the weapon on himself. When police arrived, the crime scene was so disturbing that veteran homicide detectives required psychological counseling. Dorothy Stratten was 20 years old. She'd been in Hollywood for barely 2 years, just beginning to understand her potential. Her entire future was stolen by a man who viewed her as property. Fatty Arbuckle, the comedian destroyed by false rape accusations. Sometimes the greatest injustices came without physical violence, through the power of lies, as with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. In 1921, he was one of the biggest stars in silent comedy, rivaling Charlie Chaplin. Born in 1887, Arbuckle was a gifted physical comedian. At 34, he'd just signed a contract worth $3 million. Then came Labor Day weekend, 1921. Arbuckle threw a party at San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel on September 5th. Actress Virginia Rapp, who was already ill when she arrived, became severely ill during the party. She passed away 4 days later from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. Rapp's friend, Bambina Maud Delmont, accused Arbuckle of violently assaulting Rapp with a Coca-Cola bottle, claiming he'd caused the fatal injuries. The accusation made national headlines. Yellow journalism seized upon the story, inventing lurid details. Arbuckle was depicted as a monster. District Attorney Matthew Brady brought charges despite weak evidence, and knowing Delmont's testimony was unreliable. Arbuckle's reputation was destroyed. His films were pulled from theaters. His career ended before the first trial began. 3 separate trials followed. The first and second ended in hung juries. In the third trial in April 1922, the jury deliberated for only 6 minutes before returning a verdict of not guilty. They took the unprecedented step of issuing a written apology. Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women who have sat listening for 31 days to the evidence that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all blame. But the apology couldn't undo the damage. Studios blacklisted him. The public never fully forgave him, despite his innocence. Arbuckle tried rebuilding his career under a pseudonym, but he never regained his success. On June 29, 1933, Arbuckle had a fatal heart attack. He was 46 years old. The man who'd been vindicated never recovered his good name. These 22 stories remind us that behind every dazzling smile was a real person, often suffering in ways we never knew. The Hollywood dream destroyed as many lives as it elevated. If this journey through Hollywood's darkest secrets moved you, hit that like button and share this video. These stories deserve to be remembered. Not the sanitized myths, but the painful truths. Fatty Arbuckle was completely innocent. The jury even apologized. But Hollywood destroyed him anyway. Tell us in the comments. Do you think the industry has changed? Or does this still happen today? And which of these 22 tragedies shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below. Veronica Lake, the peekaboo girl who died forgotten and alone. The industry's cruelty came in many forms. Veronica Lake's peekaboo hairstyle, blonde hair falling over one eye, defined 1940s glamour. Born Constance Frances Marie Ockelman in 1922, she became a film noir icon in classics like This Gun for Hire, often paired with Alan Ladd. During World War II, the U.S. government approached Lake with an unusual request. Women working in factories were copying her hairstyle, and the long hair was getting caught in machinery, causing injuries and fatalities. Would she consider changing her famous hair? Lake agreed, wanting to support the war effort. Instead, it became symbolic of her career's decline. The reality was more complex than just a hairstyle change. Lake had developed a volatile temper and earned a reputation for being difficult. Her alcoholism worsened as her career faltered, making her unreliable. By the late 1940s, studios stopped offering her roles. By the 1960s, Veronica Lake was working as a barmaid in New York City. One regular customer recognized her. "Aren't you Veronica Lake?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "I used to be." Lake passed away on July 7, 1973, at age 50 from hepatitis, a complication of years of alcohol abuse. She was living in a boarding house, nearly forgotten. The woman who defined an era ended her life anonymous and alone. Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde who died at 26. One star's passing was even more preventable. Jean Harlow was the original platinum bombshell. Born Harley Carpenter in 1911, she bleached her hair platinum and became a symbol of feminine allure in the 1930s. Her performances in films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8 showcased extraordinary beauty and genuine comedic talent. At 26, she was at the peak of her career, starring opposite Clark Gable in Saratoga. During filming in May 1937, Harlow began feeling ill. She experienced severe abdominal pain, fatigue, and swelling. The symptoms indicated uremic poisoning caused by kidney failure, a treatable condition. But Harlow's mother, Mama John, was a devout Christian Scientist who believed illness was an illusion that could be cured through prayer. She refused to allow physicians to examine her daughter. As days passed, Harlow's condition worsened dramatically. She collapsed on set. Her skin turned gray. She slipped in and out of consciousness. MGM executives finally overruled Mama Jean and brought in physicians. But by then, her kidneys had failed irreversibly. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow passed away. She was 26 years old. The tragedy is its complete preventability. With proper treatment, she would have survived easily. But her mother's religious beliefs ended her life. Jean Harlow should have had decades ahead. Instead, she became another tragic example of stars failed by those who were supposed to protect them. Clara Bow, the it girl whose mother tried to murder her. One star's family did something even more horrifying. Clara Bow was the it girl, the embodiment of 1920s jazz-age freedom. Born in Brooklyn in 1905 to desperately poor parents, she escaped poverty through her beauty and talent, becoming the biggest female star of the silent film era. By 1927, she was receiving 45,000 fan letters per week. But Clara's childhood had been a nightmare of poverty and mental illness that Hollywood concealed. Her mother, Sarah, suffered from severe, untreated mental illness, likely schizophrenia. Clara's father was largely absent. One night when Clara was in her mid-teens, she woke to find her mother standing over her bed, holding a butcher knife. Sarah, in a psychotic delusion, believed her daughter was becoming morally corrupted and intended to end her life to save her soul. Clara fought her mother off, but the trauma scarred her permanently. This childhood terror, combined with the pressure of fame, destroyed Clara's mental health. She developed severe anxiety and insomnia. She had panic attacks on film sets. Her behavior became erratic. By 1931, at age 26, Clara retired from acting, unable to cope. She married cowboy actor Rex Bell and moved to a remote ranch in Nevada. Clara spent the rest of her life plagued by mental illness. She passed away in September 1965, at age 60 from a heart attack. The it girl who'd represented freedom and joy had been destroyed by the mother who gave her life, and then tried to take it away. Clara Bow never recovered from the night she woke to see her mother with a knife. Peg Entwistle, the actress who jumped from the Hollywood sign. The final story brings us full circle to a young woman destroyed by the symbol of Hollywood dreams itself. The Hollywood sign, perched on Mount Lee above Los Angeles, has beckoned aspiring performers for a century. Those 9 white letters represent infinite possibilities. For Peg Entwistle, it became the site of her tragic end. Born Millicent Lillian Entwistle in Wales in 1908, Peg was a talented stage actress who'd worked successfully on Broadway. In 1932, at age 24, she came to Hollywood chasing the same dream that brought thousands every year. She appeared in one film for RKO Pictures, 13 Women, playing a small supporting role. The film was poorly received. Her contract wasn't renewed. The months that followed brought nothing but rejection. Failed auditions, disinterested casting directors. Depression consumed Peg as her savings ran out. On the evening of September 16, 1932, she told her uncle she was meeting friends. Instead, she walked to the Hollywoodland sign, climbed the maintenance ladder attached to the letter H, 50 feet high, and jumped. A hiker found her body 2 days later. The cruelest irony came days later. A letter arrived offering her a role in a play at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. The role was for a woman who takes her own life. The part that might have changed everything arrived too late. Peg Entwistle was 24 years old. The Hollywood sign was transformed by Peg's tragic end into a monument to crushed dreams. Over the decades, Hollywoodland was shortened to Hollywood, but Peg's ghost is said to haunt the area still. The letter H stands now as both beacon and warning. Dreams can come true in Hollywood, but they can also destroy you. 22 stars, 22 nightmares hidden behind perfect smiles. Frances Farmer lost her mind to institutional mistreatment. Jackie Coogan lost his fortune to his mother's greed. Sharon Tate lost her life, an unborn child, to random violence. Shirley Temple lost her innocence to a predator. Joan Crawford's children lost their childhoods. Natalie Wood, Marilyn Monroe, and Inger Stevens passed away, under circumstances that still don't make sense. Lana Turner's daughter ended a life to save her mother, or covered for her. Montgomery Clift's face was destroyed. Hedy Lamarr's genius was dismissed. Peter Lorre and Bela Lugosi passed away broke and typecast. Vivien Leigh's mind betrayed her. Barbara Payton and Dorothy Stratten were destroyed by violent men. Fatty Arbuckle was destroyed by lies. Veronica Lake passed away forgotten. Jean Harlow was taken by her mother's faith. Clara Bow never escaped her mother's knife. And Peg Entwistle jumped from the symbol of Hollywood dreams. Some of their suffering led to change. Jackie Coogan's stolen fortune created laws protecting child actors. Shirley Temple's courage exposed predatory abuse. Each tragedy pushed the industry toward better protections. But the human cost was unbearable. Real people were destroyed by a system that valued profit over humanity. When you watch these classic films now, remember, you're watching Frances Farmer before her mind was stolen. Jackie Coogan earned the fortune his mother would steal. Sharon Tate 3 years before she'd beg for her baby's life. Montgomery Clift's beautiful face before the crash. All of them performed brilliantly while suffering privately. Their art remains, and their films still bring joy. That's valuable and worth celebrating. But now you know the truth behind the glamorous facade. These 22 stars deserved better than the system that destroyed them. They deserved protection, respect, and the freedom to be human rather than manufactured perfection. The Hollywood sign still stands, calling another generation of dreamers. The dream is real. Fame, success, artistic achievement are possible. But Peg Entwistle's ghost reminds us, for every person who succeeded, many more were broken. Hollywood's golden age gave us immortal films. It also gave us these 22 cautionary tales about the price of fame and the cost of living as public property. May we remember them completely, not as flawless icons, but as complex, courageous human beings who suffered greatly. May we honor both their artistic achievements and their human suffering. And may we never forget, behind every perfect smile was often someone fighting battles we couldn't see. This is Golden Age Files, where we illuminate the shadows behind Hollywood's golden light. These stars deserved better. Until next time, may we remember them as they truly were, beautifully, tragically, and completely human.